What is going on, you guys? It's your boy, Sayonara to SuckMeSoft here, and we are back with episode 111 of the video game therapy series. Yeah, I had a bit of I won't really say an eventful because this is totally inconsequential. And by the way, this is also not my normal topic. But I'm going to kick this one off with a bit of a rant today. I'm not really as peeved as maybe other people would be in my position, but maybe you'll see why in a second. So anyway, people ask if I've ever gotten tired of playing Minecraft, which I yes and no, I suppose. That's like I always come back to it. It's kind of the girl next door of video games for me. But I do. There are other games that I've enjoyed playing throughout the years. Well, my brothers and I used to play Black Ops a lot, so I've had a history of playing some of the Call of Duty games, and those are nice. So I thought it'd be nice to, or maybe I wasn't certain on doing this, but I was considering doing a bucket spanner to just some zombies gameplay, instead. So it'd be a little bit of a change of pace, just if you're somebody that for some odd reason watches these videos and hates the Minecraft part of it, you'd at least have something different, something else to see. And who knows, maybe it would change my listener demographic a bit too. But either way, so I did all the problems of getting uh, Black Ops to run on Linux, of course, because I'm not. I tried a VM that was kind of a lot harder than it sounded, a lot harder than it should have been, maybe. And eventually got it working with like Lutris and Proton GE. Anyway, I played for like an hour and then went to bed. And then at 3 a.m., I got a automated, exactly 3 a.m. That's how I know it was automated, unless I don't know, they're hiring Indian people to ban people. But yeah, I got my account permanently banned. It wasn't even like I got like a warning or like we see unusual activity from your account. It was literally just like, no, it was an auto ban. They just completely banned me for use of unauthorized software, which I was guessing was just a, hey, we discovered looks like you're using Linux. You're probably cheating, which it just seems like a terrible heuristic to have if like I didn't even play on any online games. It's like it's not like I was cooking in multiplayer or I was like calling in nukes or like nuke hacking or anything. I was playing solo local offline zombies. Like why should that trick any anomaly detector? And it was the Cold War was the game that I was playing. I used to actually play it a lot. So maybe the anomaly was just like, oh, wait, this person hasn't played in 3 years, and they're playing all of a sudden. They must have gotten hacked, or they must be a hacker now. But of course, it wasn't me. I was just picking the game back up because that is what happens sometimes. Sometimes you just lose and you come back to it. It's normal. Minecraft wouldn't get mad at me and ban me. I guess now that Microsoft owns it, they might. But I can still run the binaries on my machine. At least I should be able to. But no, they completely banned me. And then I appealed it, obviously, and explained that like I wasn't hacking or anything. I just was using Linux. I haven't played in a while. There shouldn't be anything, strange about it. If you can watch my gameplay, there's nothing strange about it. Didn't import any hacks. I was just getting it to work, for God's sakes. And of course, there was automated rejection of that too. So I guess I just flushed my money down the toilet that I spent on that game, and it kind of proved to me again that Minecraft is the one and only true love for me when it comes to games of any kind. It really is just unfortunate that this is like just the whole state of affairs. And what made me feel better was that I thought it was just like maybe I was like 1 in 1,000 or just, like it's just Linux users. It wasn't even just Linux users. It's like people on PS5s and Xbox 4s that also gotten torched with this. And thankfully, I only played for like an hour, so it wasn't like I was losing a bunch of progress. But the people who spent like thousands of dollars or hundreds of hours on this it must be humiliating for them all of a sudden just to literally get that like their game just rug pulled out from under them for no, like they don't provide any like, oh, here's what you did, or here's like we have your logs, here's the logs that we've like we've identified as problematic. It's just like, no, it's just like a heavy hammer ban, and there's no like you can't appeal it. The only way you could get it back is if you create a new Activision account and bought another account, but then there's nothing stopping them from just banning me again, so it wouldn't make any fucking difference. And the reason I said my name to this episode was Sayonara to SuckMeSoft. My name in the account is not Rusty Buckets. I don't know when I made it, but it was SuckMeSoft, which is another pretty classic one liner. But yeah, I got banned after playing for an hour, and wasn't alone. There's the Better Business Bureau has these like list of complaints or whatever that you add to it, and there's like 30,000 people that are listing complaints, and then their rating out of like 2,000 people or 1,800 people that had given it a 1 to 5 star rating. I obviously just gave it a 1 star rating. You can't give 0, but you can give 1. But the rating was 1.1, meaning that besides like 2 people that maybe gave it a 5 stars or 2 stars, everybody else gave it a literal 1 star rating. Presumably, also these are also people that just got permabanned for no reason. And while I'm not going to say that like hackers don't ruin games or something like that, but there's like you can be smart about how you're detecting anomalies, right? And especially for games that cost a bunch of money for people to play. You know, in the case of Cold War, I think it was $70 when I bought it. Might be cheaper now, but that's how much it was then. You can't have ruling with that heavy of a hammer, and the fact that you're just banning, upward tens of thousands of people for no reason, is ridiculous. And then like the other argument is like, well, it's your fault for being a Linux user, not just using Windows. Just do it, and it'll work fine. I think like that argument doesn't work. Like, oh, just do what they say and everything will work fine. How often has that really worked out for everybody involved? Just do what they say, it'll all work out fine. Yeah, tell that to the people. Tell the people who are enslaved. The people just do what they say and everything will work out fine. No, people, if given the opportunity, people will exploit others, and it's part of it is up to the checks and balances of the powers that be to control the amount of that people are getting exploited. And if you're an exploited person, the answer is not to be, well, they'll be nice. Like, no, they won't. I know they won't at all. What are you talking about? They're going to be nice. There's no, like, I would not use Windows as not the answer to, we just banned 30,000 people using all different platforms. Not even just like, wasn't even just Linux people. It was people on Windows, people on PS5, people who had literally had no, what is the suspicion there? They're just like, they're playing better. Maybe like their buddy picked up the controller for 5 minutes. Like, is that really worth a permanent ban to their account? And I'm not being like facetious, but like I'm literally not. These are people's stories that they've shared, and my story was just as ridiculous. I literally played for an hour on a solo local map, and it's like, yeah, my KD ratio in zombies was like 300 to 1 because it's zombies. So like if you're just banning people who have a high KD ratio, it's zombies. What are you talking about? I mean, I also play like 2 games of bots, which is also like my KD ratio was also because, but I was playing like recruit difficulty bots, which by the way is like one of the old like. As an American pastime. If you're a Gen Z kid is playing bots, on Modern Warfare or something like that. Because bots is fun. You play recruit bots and you just beat the living shit out of them, and it's fun. I don't know. But if you're measuring KD ratio on that, that's not really fair either, because that's not like, obviously it wasn't cheating. They're just bots who suck, and I haven't played in a while. And I was just warming up. Anyway, it's ridiculous, but yeah, the line of reasoning that's like, well, just do what people say. If you do it the way it's supposed to be done, then you won't have any problems. Which is not true, because people were doing it the right way and still got banned. But also, again, I disagree with that being as like a reasonable line of logic to be like, well, it's your own fault for not like using quote unquote authorized software, which is also such like a hilariously ironic thing to say, like from a proprietary program, like authorized software, as if it's like. Like Linux is a virus. I just imagine the kind of people that work at Activision, or at least the people that make these decisions. I'm sure some of them are, probably all right, but the ones that are like, well, we can't have people running Linux on this, otherwise they'll be cheating. Like there's 1,001 ways to cheat, and sure, using Linux is probably an easier way than using Windows, just because Windows is crap and you can't hardly do anything on it. You're not even like a root user on Windows, for God's sakes. You're like, at best, you're an admin, whatever the hell that means. But even so, it's I forgot what I was saying. But either way, it's ridiculous, and I appealed it, but I guess I lost already. So there's not really anything I can do. So I guess if you were looking forward to me playing zombies and not Minecraft, it's too bad, because the decision was made for you that I'll be only playing Minecraft. I guess it was the universe saying that this needs to remain a Minecraft channel and remain in obscurity. It can't be any chance of anyone else of watching this. So anyway, I'll move on to something else, just because that's totally not abstract. That's it's a personal beef that I had to get out. Let's see. I was thinking about cruise ships for some reason. I guess not for some reason. Cruise ships was mentioned in a book that I'm reading, and that got me thinking about it. It's just such a strange like abstraction for a vacation of some kind. It's because it's more or less just a giant like floating motel with presumably with better amenities, but there's not really any like destination in mind. Because you think of like travel, you'd want like you go somewhere, right? There's a you travel somewhere. There is a location in which you travel to. Whereas cruise ships, I realize that you do like stop at ports and places and things like that, but those are often just like it's almost very not very much different than just be the hotel itself almost. Or it's even true of just travel in general is seems to be very. I won't really say Americanized because I'll just say it's very like consumer uh, developed. It's all developed with like this end consumer in mind, and it's all meant to like kind of look the same, such that when you step foot on shore and wherever it is, the Cayman Islands or whatever, it more or less feels just as home as like a McDonald's in Idaho or something. Like everything kind of feels the same, even if you are in like a foreign location. So where it's like, sure, you're in France, but you're just in like the French McDonald's. Like, is that you're not really even experiencing France then if you're just going to the McDonald's in France? I'm not saying that people don't see anything anymore, but you can even extend this to like just things not being in their natural habitat and things just being a manifestation of other uh, of other cultures. Like even things being in a museum, I would argue is partially not true to the form that they existed in the first place. Like imagine like a work of art that was displayed prominently in a church of some kind, and they're like, oh well, this piece of art is significantly is important historically, so we have to put this in the museum. Well, then they're kind of removing it from the context of this church that it was in, and now putting it in a museum with a hodgepodge of other things, which I would argue, just cast a shadow on the actual artistic value of the piece in general. Like it was meant to, like it doesn't make as much sense out of context. And now that everything's out of context, it doesn't. It's easy to question why all this is significant in the first place. It's just like a shitty painting. But I think in the context, things can make more sense. Same with like just even literary things. I think movies are especially bad at like pulling books out of context. Whereas like if you just watch the movie, you're just like, well, it's a simple story. The guy goes out, he gets the girl, he gets killed, whatever. But like the movies are very limited in what they're able to portray it anyway. Like they only have, there's only a certain amount of time. Sure, it's like 90 minutes or 3 hours, something like that. I guess if it's those, Lord of the Rings movies that are super long. I haven't watched those. I need to watch those. But there's only so much you can display with like video and sound, whereas you can't get all that with like text, especially in like a limited format. Sure, like I suppose you could go line by line in the book and like have a I guess a scene for each like passage of some kind. But not only would that be 8 times as long, if not longer, but there is also just something indescribable that you get from the book that you don't get from the movie. And I think equating the story that you see in a movie with the story of the book, I think is a lossy at best, if not just like downright incorrect comparison. And it's not to say that you should compare them, or even to outright say that books are always better than movies, but there's certainly a lot of pieces of, I'll say just literary history or whatever that we can't really appreciate because we only understand it through film. Like I even argue, like even with like comic book things. And I'm not a comic book person, but I know people that are, and it's not my cup of tea. But I'd imagine there's just a whole lot more complexity to all of the characters and everything. It's in the written medium, and of course it is written with pictures and things like that too. But I think the text itself, there's a lot that you can portray with text that you don't get from some kind of graphic, whether that be a picture or a movie. And it's not to say that we should ban movies or either of them, but I think there's a certain appreciation we've lost for the written media. Same with like even just like a giant book. Like I think now it's like, well, this book is 800 pages. Why does it need to be that long? And I've even said that before on certain things. Some things seem incredibly long for no reason, but other things are long, and there's value to it almost. Like, and maybe I didn't appreciate this enough really until I read Emerson's essays a couple times over. But it's not. There is just something brilliant and indescribable about the I guess the wordsmithing, like the choice of words that you use to get an idea across. And sure, like you could condense it, and I could say, well, in theory, like in summation, this essay is talking about blah blah blah. And sure, you're like, okay, that's cool, but you're never like, there is a certain amount that I can't really describe about like his writing style or why this this was so poignant, or why this was such an impactful phrase, without it just being, well, this is just extra words. It's just like baggage. And I think AI is taking this to another level, because then it like always, it reduces all of the context out. So it's like, instead of anything being a literary piece written by this author in this way, and there's almost some kind of magic to the way he's describing things. It's instead like, well, here's the synopsis, and it's simple as that. And it's like, it's not really simple as that. Like, sure, you could create a synopsis if you're not like being outright wrong, but you are just, I would argue, being deceitful in how in how you're portraying this, given that you're reducing perhaps a beautifully crafted essay or poem into like two sentences of bullet points or something. Which is not to say you can never do that, but I think you lose the appreciation for the full text in doing that. So there's not really, like, even just like literary emphasis, it's all like extra baggage now. It's like all for the sake of the author. Whereas like if people used to write and like appreciate and like write for how the author spoke, now it's about like what the author is writing about. Like, I don't care who's writing this, I just want it to be quick and short and easy. Whereas like it used to be like, I love the way he's writing and phrasing this, or he or she, or there's like a certain beauty to the way that they write and the way they think about things, or way they portray things. And it even just goes beyond just a simple metaphor of it. It's just each word that is chosen so, uh, I don't know, I want to say prominently, but there's a word I'm missing there, obviously. Obviously, I can't choose that word correctly. Deliberately was the word I'm looking for. That it is. Yeah, each word chosen so deliberately. I don't know, there's a certain air of magic to it that I just don't think you get in any other medium. So I guess the only thing I really am advocating for, or just putting forth there, I think is that we've lost meaningful appreciation for what is now just like literary fluff, or just whether that be the actual full text of the writing, whether it's like the author's voice itself, even in a short piece, even in a short essay, because Emerson's essays aren't even very long. They're not long at all. There's a few pages. But the fact that like we need an AI to just like gobble it up and spit out like a condensed version of it, I think that's part of what is like, you lose the intellectual merits of it if you don't fully appreciate it all in context. I don't know where this went from cruise ships to this, but I think it stems from the same like reduction of context. Like, it doesn't, like, it's almost like I don't even need to know where the food is coming from, or like how you're preparing it, or what the story of the dish is, or who the chef is, or like what's the importance of these ingredients, or the historical significance of this meal. I just need like carbs and protein. I just need calories, which again isn't a wrong way to look at it. I suppose that food is food on some level, but there certainly is a lot of value, whether you want to assign value to it or not. A lot of value to like, well, what's the history of the dish? Why do they eat this? It's like, well, we ate this during the potato famine or something. And, some of it's just like interesting popcorn science or something like that. But a lot of it is more meaningful to like, just for appreciation. Because what else is there? I mean, if it all kind of boils down to this, like, sure, I need everything to be as efficient and as small and quick as possible. But there's a certain beauty to the inefficiency of it. And it's a testament to what being a human is. We aren't really that efficient. We're efficient in some ways that are remarkable. I think our biology is, I mean, compared to what, I guess, I don't know. Compared to a computer, we're not efficient energy-wise. We're incredibly inefficient. But, is that a reason to exterminate us? Because it's like, efficiency for what? For what sake, really? More life of what? How do you measure the efficiency of life altogether? Is the efficiency of an amoeba the same as like a computer? Well, no. Then we have to exterminate all amoebas. It's like, this is the stupidest line of logic of all time. Like, I think paperclip maxing for efficiency in some vague sense is dumb. So, and in that same sense, there should be some, I don't know, mystical beauty that we should save for, again, the literary context of certain things, as well as just the historical significance of other things. And I don't know why this started with cruise ships, but I think cruise ships are stupid. I've never actually been on a cruise, but the premise doesn't make much sense to me. Is you're just kind of floating around in a hotel, and then you land in a ship, then you get off, and you're kind of, you're on land, but you're not really. Are you in a foreign place, really? I even think just traveling in general maybe is kind of all limited concept. Like, people think they need to go somewhere, and I've talked about this before. people think they need to go somewhere to like experience someone else, or like it's like it's not what you were looking at that is limited. It's you. It's like how you are seeing things. Like I said it before, I said you could lock me in a room with an apple and I could find ways to be entertained by it. And it's not the fact that like, I need more experiences or I need a different, and sometimes you do need to change your environment. I get that. But like, I think, pitching the travel is like learning. I think traveling now is more sanitized than ever. There's a McDonald's around every corner in every country, for God's sakes. Like you're going to get almost the same experience in, traveling to Idaho than you would get to Italy, which is insulting, but it's kind of the way that globalized society has pushed us towards. And the fact that there isn't that much of a travel experience like it used to be, and I'm kind of talking out of my ass here just because I wasn't alive 100 years ago, but I, I imagine travel used to be much more of a trepidatious, endeavor where you could like legitimately die. There's ailments. There's, you get sick and things. People still get sick from the water, which I guess is the one, remnant of real travel that's remaining. But travel wasn't just like, oh, I'm a rich kid, I'm bored, I'm going to go to Italy and drink wine and go to McDonald's. It's like you're not really doing anything over there. It's like you're the same idiot. You're just in a different place. Whereas I think if you really want to like travel and be, use it to change you have to embrace the changes that are there, which are now kind of being, monetized away. It's like, oh, you pay enough money, we'll protect you from the local culture. Instead, we'll put you next to a McDonald's as you're familiar with. It's like, I don't want to eat that. I've never seen that before. It's like, there's, I don't know, a lot less of that. But I just worry that now travel is almost just kind of a pointless endeavor, I think, in terms of truly expanding the human experience, or at least it's have far less value than it was historically. I think it used to be I don't know, something that represented a much wider change. But now even just with like how globalized and interconnected the internet is, I wonder if people don't feel like they're getting connected enough doing that. Even if you know the internet isn't necessarily this beacon of democratic opinions. I suppose as long as you paid for your Activision account, then then you're okay. As long as you do it our way, it's fine. Um, anyway, I'll move on to something else here. Um, yeah, I guess this is another kind of tech thing. This was part of what you know I've been wrestling with, I guess, over the past couple days. So I reinstalled my OS and spent a few days actually. And normally, if I was running like a just works distro like Mint or something, or Ubuntu, or Debian, I'd have everything up and running in 5 minutes. But because it's Arch and I have a lot of little fancy customization scripts that I want to do, and I had to kind of update a lot of the old ones I had. Spend probably about a week of me dicking around with my computer to get it all, working properly. For the most part, there's still optimization stuff I want to make, but it got me thinking about just the uh, layers of abstractions that one can think about computers in. And I worry, or I think that there is of course, there's obviously a healthy medium to which what is too much or too little abstraction, because I think some people, because I was even looking just like specific, you know, compositors and stuff like the difference between X11 and Wayland and Hyperland as a tiling manager, and like there's all these other things that go into like a computer, and a lot of which you don't need to know. And I'm not arguing that you have to know everything about a computer, and I don't know everything about a computer, but there's certain things that I kind of just put mentally into little like buckets of like, okay, these are kind of the same thing. I have to pick one of those. Okay, these are kind of the same thing. I have to do one of these, and like, okay, this is involved, but if I do it this way, I'll kind of forget about it. And there's buckets of things I'm sure that if you were an expert, you'd be like, well, you're doing this wrong. This is like the wrong way to do it. Or you would get mad at me if I was, if I didn't, configure my tiling manager properly, or I, using two at the same time or something like that. And there's certain buckets I think are okay of abstraction. But other people I think are so far away from like, even at the operating system or even just specific, software package level, that like even the computer himself isn't even a computer. It's just like this, like a little task bunny of some kind where it's just like, I want to do this and like, I want to do this. Where it's just like, almost like they almost like, and they enjoy that's why you can see they enjoy, they relish in this like Chrome OS like interface where it's almost like there's almost nothing to the computer except for just a little bar where you just poke in questions that you have. And sure, maybe it shows you ads, but like, you know, it answers your question, 30% of the time. Of course, you have to pay, monthly before you pay for the hardware, but you don't even think about the computer as like a hardware and like, here's their services that it can do, here's the package, here's like different, there's like so many things that a computer can do. And I think abstracting it into this little box that can answer your stupid questions or, book cruise ships for you, I think is way too high level. I think you need a lower level of abstraction than that. Like you need, and this is like almost the level of basic technological literacy where I think you need to know, like you need to know what an operating system is. You need to know maybe even like the basic hardware components of a computer. Not, you don't have to be a RAM expert, but you should know maybe what a RAM stick looks like, what it is, or what a processor is, or maybe just like the basics of like what binary is. People say, well, it's binary code. Can't you code in binary? It's like coding in binary. Do you have any fucking clue what you're talking about? Do you know how? What are you talking about? That would be like a ridiculous ask, of a a programmer just whip up something in binary. No one really codes in that. Not say everyone has to be a programmer, but I think there should be a base level of technological literacy that is the same as like you know almost like changing your own oil in the car or something like that, or just knowing how the car works. Like, what is an accelerator? Well, or like, what is the accelerator? Where's the brake? You have to know what those things are in order to drive the car. Like your dashboard, or like how to turn on the radio, or like how to fix the heat. These are things that aren't even they're pretty intuitive and they're pretty easy to pick up. But I'm computers not only I would argue more powerful even than just like the engine of cars in terms of like their general utility. But they're understood even less than cars. I think more people know more about their cars, even dumbasses that know literally nothing. They just know it beeps and boops and it goes and slows. Um, Beyond people know even less about computers. There's like a little box and they're like this. They kind of know what a keyboard looks like and what the different things on the keyboard are. Maybe they took a typing class at some point, but they don't know anything beyond like they wouldn't know even like two WordPress processors. They might know one, and they would say, "Oh, well," they'd probably guess and say Microsoft. It's like, well, no, Microsoft Office is their suite of tools that includes Microsoft Word, which is the word processor. Which is, and again, it might sound like I'm being pithy or just like you know, you know, being annoying over little details. Um, but these basic principles expounded to the range of the entire society, and the fact that no one knows what the fuck any of it is a problem. I would say it is like a catastrophic problem, and when how given how ubiquitous computers are and how they're becoming. And so I don't know what the solution is. I don't know that the education system is gonna do anything to solve any of these problems with technological literacy, but people themselves certainly aren't doing themselves any favors, and companies aren't really doing the people any favors either. They're doing themselves a favor by keeping them stupid because then it's like, well, just do what they say and everything will work. It's like, well, no. And the thing is, people who know how it works knows how fucked it all is and how they're getting screwed. But the normal people who don't know anything are like, well, just do what they say and it'll work. It's like you're going to a mechanic and they just rinse you out of every dollar you have just because you don't know anything about cars. Like, oh yeah, you need new brakes, you need a new battery, you need new. Oh, these lights are on, so you need new tires. Like, really? I need all that? Okay. It's like you're gonna get scammed at every point. And like I said before, this is the age of scamming. If you're going to be a scam artist, a snake oil salesman, this is the day and age for you. This is when scammers will. We're at the peak. I think actually we're probably not at the peak yet, but we're moving towards the peak of scammers run the world. And so if you're not wary of like, oh, maybe I don't need a new battery every 3 months for my fucking car, you're just going to get screwed out of every inch and every mile. You're going to get rinsed to hell. So I just think it's in everyone's best interest, both selfishly and collectively, that there isn't just a complete ignorance of what a computer is and how technology works. Like you have to know some basics, beyond even just like beyond like how to look at boobs online. Like the fact that more people know like porn vernacular than they do what a browser is, which is like basic text editing or something. It's just it's insulting to just the human condition and just the quote unquote success of society at large. It's I don't know. It's it's harrowing to me to see that, but I don't know. Well, whoops. Anyway, let's see. I'll move on to something else here. So I guess speaking of pointlessness, uh, this is kind of tangential. It's not even really the same boat. But I was thinking about just government jobs or just many people's jobs, and I always often talked about how I'm very Office Space pilled. If you can't tell, I've seen that movie several times. It's awesome. But a lot of people's jobs are pointless, and I was thinking that a lot of people's, I'll say like government jobs are almost to um, I'll say it's to justify their job. Like your job is to justify your job. To whereas if your job is you're doing a good job if you're justifying that your job should exist. Notice that the job isn't anything beyond itself. The job is solely encapsulated in its own little world of, I'll say importance or relevance of some kind. But your job is to make your job, seem like it is a good job to be doing. It's the right thing to be doing. Whereas if your job is pointless, the last thing you want to do is be like, wait, hey guys, my job is pointless. I shouldn't be doing this because then you'll lose your job, and then but your whole job is to keep the job and convince other people, and whether or not it should be true or not, convince them that it is purposeful and you are, it's imperative that we keep you working this job, um, which is silly. But I argue that you could most jobs you could contextualize in that manner that your job is to justify your job and to keep it. Otherwise, you'll lose your job. Which no one wants that. So, but notice it's like telling the truth or like helping other people or helping society or doing anything that's worthwhile is not in the job description. It's simply justifying your job. Can you justify it? It's just, I don't know. I thought that was a pretty accurate um, portrayal of jobs. Um, anyway, I'll move on to something else too. Let's see if I can find hoppers. No, I can't. Um, let's see. This is another thing. This is kind of related to the whole like travel talking. Where it's like, what would you do if you had $1 million? We're like, well, I would want to travel and I want to see the world. And it's like, I'm like, well, I don't think I really need to do that. And it's like, well, why not? Like, aren't you curious about, aren't you curious about what the other world's like, or what life is around the world, or aren't you curious about like what this tastes like? And they're like, sure, there are like I could look at a plant and be like, oh, I'm curious on some very vague level of like what that would taste like, but like I don't need to put that in my mouth. And like, sure, I'm curious about like what's the temperature in Fiji or Hawaii or something, or is it fun? I don't have to do everything. Like just because I am curious doesn't mean I have to like quench that thirst, especially if it's like an impractical thing that ultimately is it's just a pain in the ass for everyone. If I'm, running around, being a tourist at other places, trying to find my true self because I made a bunch of money or something like that. I just think just because you have to, like, you don't have to be curious about the rest of the world. Like, you don't, it's like, wouldn't you want to know what it's like to be famous? I don't have to, no, I don't, sure, but no, I don't have to like, don't require just because like it is kind of it's a normal thing to be curious about. Don't require that it's like, well, surely you are curious about this, right? Surely you like want to be famous because you want to know what it's like. It's like, no, I don't think I do. I don't think I need to, like, I don't have to like want that just because it's a normal like kind of, I'll say, just like casual thing that to think about is like, oh, what if I was famous? Doesn't mean that you like must want fame of some kind. I think it's silly. Same with like money. Like, don't you want to know? Wouldn't you want to know what it's like to be a billionaire? It's like, I mean, maybe, but then I would, but what if it sucked and I want to be right back to where I was? And like, well, it doesn't look like it sucks. Wouldn't you want to know? It's like, sure, I might want to know, like in a vague sense, but I don't surely don't have to know it. I surely don't want to spend all day daydreaming about it, because it's just not. I don't know. It's not a requirement. You don't have to be curious about the same things. But I feel like I got that. I get that a number of times when people are gushing over something and they're like, oh, look at this boat this guy got. Don't you like I don't give a fuck about the guy's boat. I don't really care what I'm sure. I mean, I'm sure he I'm sure he's curious about nothing and there's nothing else that he wants. Like, no, I'm sure he just he's envious of I don't know, someone that knows how to use a computer or isn't addicted to gambling or porn or something like that. Because that describes pretty much, no, it's always, the grass is always greener. I'm not envious of any of these people, no matter how nice and shiny their lives may seem. Even these people with all this insane power, with the power to unban my Activision account. I'm not envious of them at all. In fact, I feel bad for them that they work for such a Brainless company. Anyway, I'll move on to something else here. Let's see here. Let's scroll down to my topic. Um, yeah, I was also thinking about uh just generations. These are obviously very broad buckets that are probably demeaning to the people within the generations, but I do think it's maybe worth categorizing, or at least thinking about. And sure, these aren't accurate, and it really depends. But there are certain like attitudes that I feel are more prevalent in certain generations versus others. Um, and I guess I'll start just in order. Um, so I guess I won't go Gen Alpha because their attitude is kind of like to not. I don't even know. I don't know enough Gen Alphas to make an opinion on that. I think I know people. The other generations I can speak for, but Gen Alpha, I truly can't. Indescribable would be my thing. But Zoomers, which I fit squarely in, are I would say defiant and probably conventionally lazy, but certainly not like lazy in any absolute sense. And they're maybe conventionally lazy in the sense that they're like, well, this doesn't make sense. I don't want to do that. Which I say that all the time. Like, it doesn't make sense. I don't want to do that. And it's not that like if I didn't see value in it, I wouldn't do it. It's just I'm defiant enough to say, well, this kind of seems stupid and I don't want to do that. And it's just like, well, this is the way we've done it for a long time and it's worked so far. It's like, well, one, sure, you've done it for a long time and like maybe it has worked in some sense, but working for what? And sustainability might even be the lens to look at some of these things through. It's like, sure, the economy might have been, might look good in your lifetime, but it isn't sure that it'll always be that way. It's like, just because it has worked before doesn't mean it'll always work. And yeah, it's sort of like things that, last for a few years are likely to last longer, but there are many things that, that die and they don't, just because it has worked in the past doesn't mean it'll always work. I don't know. Um, yeah, I don't know. I just think in general, Zoomers are defiant and maybe conventionally lazy, but not in any absolute sense. And these are all perhaps more negative things. I'm not necessarily going to go through the good things about each generation, but maybe I'll touch on those as we go. And defiance isn't even a bad thing either. Defiance can be seen as a good thing. I think there is a certain healthy amount of defiance where it's like, well, this is dumb. I don't think it should work this way. And at some point you're like, well, maybe you are being dumb. You should do what you're told. But in maybe a lot of other senses, it's like, well, you're probably right. Actually, this doesn't. This is you're just doing this for the sake of doing it or being told that you're doing it and just listening versus like actually applying your thinking. Um, Millennials are maybe like effortful, but I think their biggest gripe for me is just that they're whiny. I realize that might sound a lot, and maybe I sound whiny, like, oh, don't you have hundreds of hours of you just whining into a computer? And maybe hopefully this doesn't sound whiny more so than just maybe introspective or I don't know explorative in some sense. Maybe it does sound whiny. I don't know. But millennials do seem like to be the most outspoken whiny generation compared to others. And boomers can make a case for this for sure, and Zoomers too. I'm not absolving us, but we tend to be a little bit more satire or ironic in our whining, versus millennials are like you know legitimately complaining about their dog's toenail, not realizing that there's uh, most people do not give a fuck about your stupid dog and their toenail, and that's and they mean that only mostly serious. But yeah, I think whininess was kind of the big word I wanted to pull out of this. Um, Boomers are while being very prosperous and successful financially, I'll say holistically as a generation for sure, they are self-righteous would be the big word I'm going to focus on here. Maybe I'm just looking at a word for each generation that I think is encapsulating of them. Um, but yeah, self-righteous. It was like, well, I had to go uphill both ways to school, and I did all that, and it worked out for me, and blah blah. It comes across as very self-righteous in the sense that like, well, they did it, they could do it, you can do it, or like, what's anything's possible. Like, it was hard back, and it was harder for us than it is for you guys. I'd kill to have opportunities you guys have. Without realizing there's probably a lot more that goes into it than versus like, oh, you guys are all pieces of shit, and like, I worked for everything you have. And like I said before, my joke was that I think that boomers might have earned 60% of their money, I don't know, 40%. You can kind of debate me on the specifics there, but they certainly didn't earn 100%. They kind of, borrowed a lot from the future generations, and ultimately saddled them with a bunch of problems and debt, or just you know utopianist thinking, in the sense that that's not really how it's going to work, or it's not really not, technology isn't going to save us, and all of a sudden make everybody live off UBI. And the legislation you guys have passed in your lifetime certainly isn't going to do anything for that. But either way, self-righteous was kind of the word I landed on for Zoomers. Beyond that, the silent generation and the gray, I don't know, they're all mostly dead, so I feel like I shouldn't say anything about them. I also don't think I know enough about people that old. So yeah, I don't know. I'll move on. Let's see here. I want to talk a little bit about my foray into comedy, which I've said is kind of a joke, but not really. And it's only because philosophy has kind of failed to become. It's hard to take serious a lot of the times. I think, and maybe it's just that maybe I'm an absurdist in that sense, but I even think absurdism is still can still be taken very seriously. But I worry that in general, like, as I get philosophical on things, it all just tends to kind of melt. To where I'm more or less, I don't even know what I'm arguing for or anything, and there's almost just not really a point in what I don't really know what I'm doing, philosophically, that is. Where it all kind of boils down to, like, again, kind of kind of a comedic. It's almost for comedic relief, almost. Which I suppose is one way to I guess, to categorize I guess the extent of philosophy. I suppose at one point you start as a serious philosopher. I talk about my like three ways to look at life, as like, one, you could ignore the big questions; two, you can ask the big questions and take them seriously; or three, you can ask the big questions but don't take them seriously, or don't let them trouble you. I really think this is where the line between comedy and philosophy kind of blurs a lot. And I do really think that the best comedians are truly just philosophers that have not really given up, but they've given up on the serious pursuit of philosophy, even this literary pursuit of philosophy, where it's like it's all just kind of a joke. And I think you have to at least circle the block to know, to recognize it as almost the whole thing in satire. Because if you still take everything serious, and you still, like, I don't know, I think people get offended very easily by lots of comedians, because it's like they're still taking their philosophy seriously. Where I think the philosopher that has become a comedian knows that no amount of seriousness will like, the absurdity of it all will still plague them, even if everyone does take them serious. So there isn't really, so as serious as they could be, or they'll be equally hypocritical. So there's not really any way out of being, like, purely philosophical in nature. I think there's always just kind of this, like, well, I can say this, but at the same time, it's like I'm kind of being a hypocrite. And like I said, to be human is to be a hypocrite. So I don't, I obviously, agree with that. But I do think there is a certain, people kind of forget that, people forget that there is, a relationship, if not just a overlap even, between, comedy and the purest form of philosophy. So, well, I won't be quick to say who I am or what I do. I've certainly moved away from taking philosophical things, as serious. And make sure I might be serious. I'm not, like, dying laughing at myself in these videos. Partially because I'm just not that funny, but also because I'm still learning how to, not take philosophy seriously, or to at least be serious about serious questions, but then to not let the unseriousness of it, I guess, pull away from the point, or to be too serious to the point where it's no longer funny. So I don't know. There is just this interesting overlap between comedy and philosophy, but I don't know. Maybe I'm not feeling very articulate today, so we're going to we'll work with what we got here. Let's see here. Yeah. Most people, this is just a thesis I put forward here. Most people's needs are shittily met, and shittily is my own word here for just being met poorly, by giant oligarchic corporations who have monopolies in their respective industries. this was mostly like just in the context of like any kind of reform is always like, well, but we have this, or like, well, this is good enough, or like it's not going to be perfect. As to justify like what I'll say are like blatant monopolies on things. And technology is obviously an easy scapegoat for me to point at and rebuke here, because there's obviously each little segment of the technology industry has its own monopoly on things, and is purposely making things difficult, against the whole concept of human flourishing. Um, but I think reform in that would cause like severe economic uh, downturn, like severe economic problems, in the sense that people aren't really willing to embrace that. I for one am, since I don't. I mean, I think it's. I think the kind of the world economy needs this kind of severe correction, because I think things are vastly overvalued across the board. And sure, I'm sure PE firms and things will disagree with me and say, well, there's these undervalued stocks. I don't care about the stocks in general. I'm speaking about the actual value of money in the world is overvalued, meaning that the amount of actual productivity, and I'll say that in terms of like bread being made or labor that has happened, is less than the what the market has to say about all of that. Now, I don't know exactly what that converts to in terms of a mathematical formula. Again, I'm not not a quant, um, but I am saying, based off of my intuition, that the world is overvalued, and I don't even know what. Sure, there might be specific aspects of the economy that haven't reached their monetization peak, but in general, we've overvalued everything too much, and we're too optimistic about the future. And not to say that everyone should be pessimistic. I think optimism is maybe not optimism, but like hope is fine. You can still hope for good, but understand that things probably or might get worse. I think you kind of you have to expect it too on in some contexts, in which this would be one. Because I just don't see. And again, I'm not no financial expert by any means, but uh, like I said, it's just personally based off of my intuition. I don't see things. Uh, their values justified in the amount of money we've moved around. But anyway, I'll move on to something else too here. Let me see here. Um, yeah, I guess this is another thing just on hobbies. This is totally. I'm jumping around a lot here just because I don't have much to say that is sticking with me at any point. Um, I think I aspire to have hobbies that don't cost money. I often see just uh, I don't, millennials a lot are notorious for this, but having like collecting hobbies that collect stuff. It's like I certainly don't want any more stuff. I think that's not. You don't want to have a hobby that collects stuff. I mean, digital stuff is one thing. I suppose that might be mine. Is just a digital collection of stuff, and whether in this case it's like stupid videos or movies or whatever. But like collecting action figures or other things, I think are I don't know. It's kind of a problematic thing to have, as well as one that costs money. Like I collect coins, or action figures or something like that. It's always going to cost money, and that'll continue to be my hobby that costs money. But having hobbies that cost no money is nice, and also ones that maybe are modular. And I put sport maybe in a different category entirely. You can say, oh, my hobby is running. I don't think it should be a hobby. I think that should be your like everyone should have their own kind of forms of required exercise. And if yours is running, then that's fine. But don't call it like a hobby of yours. Like a hobby can be weaving or writing or reading and these things. And sure, like those reading costs some money because you have to buy the book to read. What are you going to read? Or writing costs some money because you have to buy paper to write on or a computer to type up or something. But besides that, it's not like a recurring cost. It's not like every time I have to indulge in my hobby, I have to go on Amazon and buy something. It's like, or my hobby is just like shopping in some different form, which I think is almost an evil. It's evil that we've like conjured that up into like a genuine hobby to have. It's like, oh well, my hobby is to like scroll through eBay and find deals on Amazon for obscure coins from that had Lincoln's face on it. It's like this just seems that's a hobby. This is ridiculous. Like what? This just seems like behavior that should put you in an asylum. Not a harmless little hobby, which it is harmless. I understand, but I just think it's kind of anti-human to have like shopping of some kind or collecting crap. as a hobby. So, not that I'm here to itemize different hobbies of things that, and rank them on being better or worse, but certainly ones that don't have any uh, recurring costs, and even costs like, human cost of like, I have to have my hobby is like poker. I have to like get my gambling fix with my buddies. So I got my buddies over. I got to have some beers, and it's like that also seems like a hobby that has a high cost. Not because it costs money. Maybe it's free, or you guys gamble with beer, or just like tortilla chips or something like that. Uh, but it still requires 5 people to come over. Requires the night off work and the wives to leave you alone or whatever it is. I don't know. It just seems very. I wish there was just a proliferation of more hobbies that didn't cost anything and didn't cost anything indirectly, like financially and other, including other people's time and other people's resources and energy. That also is a cost. So I would say solitary and low financial or no financial. I'll say low because nothing's technically no, that aren't physical in nature are hobbies. And everyone kind of needs to have one, or several of those to keep them, occupied in some sense. And maybe some people have their work as their hobby, and so they just like to work all the time. And I would love to know what they do that affords them that comfortability in the sense that they truly think that their work is that pleasurable. But because I don't, I think a lot of people don't feel that. Most people don't enjoy their job, so it's, I guess, good on you if you really enjoy, being a nurse and you'd rather work when you're not working. I think most people enjoy not working, but I don't know. Anyway, I'm a bit all over the place today, so maybe I'll get better next time. But anyway, peace out.